Welcome to another video for IB Environmental Systems and Societies. Today's topic is 3.3, Threats to Biodiversity. I'm going to run through this relatively quickly to help you review for your mock exams and prepare for the IB ESS examinations coming up at the end of the year. Let's get into it. The first big idea is that global biodiversity is difficult to measure exactly, but we are aware that it is decreasing rapidly due to human activities. One of the tools that we use is assigning species conservation status, and that's done through the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Quantifying biodiversity. Estimates of how many species there are on our planet vary widely. And if we go down here and we take a look at what's hiding back here behind my picture, we see that 86% of all species on land and 91% of those in the seas are yet to be discovered. In part, that's because they're difficult to find, in part because of a lack of funding. There are many reasons for that, but basically the short answer is we're not entirely sure what lives on our planet. We've only assessed a small portion of it. We also know that extinction rates are increasing rapidly. In my previous video about origins of biodiversity, we looked at the background extinction rate, and we know that current rates of extinction far exceed the historic background extinction rate. Most of those extinctions are due to habitat destruction as the human population expands into previously undeveloped areas, the introduction of invasive species as our global commerce becomes increasingly interconnected, the addition of pollution to the ecosystem, and overharvesting and hunting, both of which are kind of the same thing. Current rates of extinction loss, really high compared to where they've been. We're looking at possibly the world's sixth great mass extinction right now, called the Anthropocene. If we look at the red list, that's the IUCN red list showing extinction rates, right? The groups of species that are most at risk of extinction here, all right? Better odds, look at the corals. Really clearly stands out here. Corals are dropping very rapidly because they exist only in a very narrow band of optimal temperature and aquatic conditions in shallow seas. As the ocean rises due to climate change, and as those areas are increasingly subject to human interference activities, those corals are increasingly stressed. Then we get this massive statement from the ESS syllabus: red list, population size, speciation, distribution. These are all the things that are factors we use to determine the conservation status of species. So instead of trying to do this all at once, let's look at them one by one. Okay, here on the left side of the screen, you see the IUCN labels. Least concern, as you might guess by the name, we're not terribly worried about the status of these species. They seem to be doing just fine in face of human activities. The farther down this list you go, the closer species become to extinct until they actually become extinct. So extinct in the wild means the only place that they exist on our planet are in captivity. Critically endangered, and vulnerable are all considered threatened, right? You can see those here, red, orange, and yellow. So as we go down the list on the left or up the list on the right, the risk of extinction increases. What are the factors that go into that? Well, they're pretty varied. But if we look at this list here, and let me move myself out of the way for a moment. If we look at this list here, 2018, right, of all of the gastropods, almost 2,700 species. Almost 2,700 species of gastropods. Most of them are green or least concern, similarly with the bony fishes, right? So lots of green is good. The more red, orange, and yellow you see, the more threatened those species are as a portion. So if we go to the bottom of the list here, the cycads, which are an ancient palm-like tree that's related to ferns, of the 307 known species on Earth, more than half of them, about 62% of them, are threatened in some way. The IUCN uses several different factors to consider whether or not a species is threatened or how threatened it is. Population size. It's easier to wipe out small populations. Species that are highly specialized for a very particular ecological niche, also at risk of extinction, because if that niche gets modified or wiped out, so does that species. Species that are distributed very widely, because they're in a wide range of habitats or ecosystems, are less likely to go extinct because the damage would have to be extraordinarily widespread to remove them from our planet. Reproductive potential, that refers to reproduction rates. So the more offspring a species has, the lower their risk of extinction. That's why you're going to see things like cockroaches and ants and bacteria at the bottom of your extinction lists in terms of risk levels. When we look at geographic range and how that range is fragmented, right? Intact habitats allow organisms to migrate in and out and allow populations to intermingle and interbreed. We talked about that a little bit in topic 3.2 in biodiversity, right? So the more intact the habitat is, the lower the range, the lower the risk of extinction. Again, also habitat that is high quality and not degraded, right? That provides ample nutrients and energy pathways to counteract disturbances by people, right? And trophic level, right? The lower the trophic level, the lower the risk of extinction. The higher the trophic level, frequently the higher the risk of extinction. And last but not least, we combine all of those factors to reach a determination of conservation status. Right. Tropical biomes contain some of the most biodiverse areas because of their high primary productivity due to the Earth's climate. They're also very popular areas for people to live, and because of that, they are being unsustainably used or exploited, and because of that, we have massive losses in biodiversity. Tropical biomes are some of the most diverse biomes on the planet. Tropical rainforests are considered the most biodiverse biome on Earth. And they are, unfortunately, because of their wealth of species, also a wealth of resources. And so they are being exploited and have been exploited for many years. That means in this band of tropical rainforest that you see in green across this map, that we have potential for lots of conflict. And here you are in DRC, one of the wealthiest countries on Earth in terms of resources, and yet one of the poorest countries on Earth in terms of economic development. One of the things you need to be able to do in ESS is discuss the case histories of 3 species. And I've got a few case studies on my website if you want to check out. You need one that is already extinct due to human activities. You need a second one that is currently critically endangered. And you need a third one that has previously been threatened, but whose status has improved due to conservation efforts. That doesn't mean they're no longer threatened. It just means that they've become less threatened. I encourage you to check out some of the case studies on my website because students put those together and they're pretty good. Then, of course, you need to describe threats to biodiversity from human activities in a given natural area. So you might want to discuss the Congo rainforest basin or the Amazon rainforest, or you could discuss the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. The named area, the named natural area, does not matter as long as what you can do is describe what the threats are to biodiversity in that area. then you'll also need to be able to evaluate the impact of human activity in tropical biomes. All of these little dots here show different threats to human activities. So these two slides, these two activities, describing threats to biodiversity in a given natural area and evaluating the impact of human activities, those are very closely connected. So look at what people are doing in tropical biomes, pick an activity, and describe that threat in that area. And that will probably lead you into a discussion of conflict between exploitation, meeting the needs of people, sustainable development, while ensuring that those needs of future generations can still be met, and conservation, right, that there are conflicting priorities for all three of those goals. All right, that's it for our quick review of threats to biodiversity. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Share it with other students preparing for the IB ESS exams, and I hope to see you next time. Happy learning.